Today I'm joined by Caedmon Marriott, Managing Director at Western Mines Group. Thanks for joining us today, Caedmon. It's the first time we're speaking on StockBox, so looking forward to learning more about the company. But how are you doing today?
Oh, very good, thanks. Yes, good to be on StockBox for the first time. Coming to you from Sydney today because the IMARC conference is starting tomorrow here.
Oh, excellent. Well, that'll be good then. So, given it's your first appearance, could you give us a bit of an elevator pitch for Western Mines and the Mulga Tank project, which I understand is the largest nickel sulphide deposit in its region?
That's right, yes. So Western Mines Group, ASX WMG is the ticker. We're a nickel exploration company. We listed about 4.5 years ago. We've been focused on our Mulga Tank project, which is on the Menigual Greenstone Belt. This is an entire greenstone belt in Western Australia that we own 100% of. We're exploring in a frontier area undercover, looking for large nickel sulphide deposits. And as you say, we recently put out a resource earlier this year, just under 2 billion tonnes of at about 0.27% nickel for over 5 million tonnes of contained nickel, making this comfortably the largest nickel sulphide deposit in Australia and very likely top 10, if not top 5 in the world. So, that's where we're at.
Cool, yeah. So just before we get into the asset a bit more, I wanted to ask about the nickel market generally. Can you run us through why new potential deposits of the metal are so important and critically valuable right now?
Yes, obviously the nickel market has been attracting pretty negative headlines probably for the last 18 months. And certainly just around about Christmas time earlier this year was real peak of negativity where you saw, a number of mine closures like BHP's Nickel West and other assets around the world. And all of that has been the rise of Indonesian production. The Chinese have been building a lot of capacity there. And like a number of these critical metals, China now controls through Indonesia something like 85% of global nickel, but you don't really hear about that geopolitical angle so much. So the Chinese went to Indonesia. They've built a lot of laterite processing plants, vast destruction of the local ecosystem there. And it's relatively high cost production. It's funny that when I was in the markets in the mid-early 2000s, the nickel laterite projects were always fourth quartile. And a sulphide project is where you want it to be. Whereas these days, people think of nickel as Indonesia as being cheap production. Yeah. Whereas argue it wouldn't. At $15,000 a ton, nobody's making money at these current prices. And that's very evident in Indonesia now. So we're very constructive on the outlook for the nickel market. The Indonesians, they went out, they mined the highest grade first, the closest to infrastructure first, the easiest to access ore. You're seeing grades declining. And so all of that just leads to an increase in that base cost for them. And plus, you're starting to see ESG become an increasingly key component of it. And the Indonesian government very much tiptoeing around China because, of course, it's China that's causing this mess, but they don't like to call them out by name. But you're seeing they're starting to tidy up things. They're managing ore quotas. You're seeing plants having to go offline when incidents occur and things like that. And so I think increasingly, if they add to the ESG burden of these projects, then again, that's a rising cost base if the Chinese finally have to become compliant. And so where does that put a sulphide project like ours? Well, sulphide projects should come in the bottom half of the cost curve. Yeah. And perhaps, as a global theme these days, sulphide projects are way less CO2 intensive. Something like a quarter of the CO2 intensity as a laterite project. So if you want green nickel, if you want to go into lithium batteries and things like that, then sulphide projects is certainly where you want to go. So we've got a strategic asset. It's in the Western world. It can supply Western supply chains, potentially low cost, cheap green nickel. We think we're in a pretty exciting space. Not in the near term. Nickel's still at 15,000, but on a 3, 4, 5 year view, when nickel's back up at 20,000 and everyone's looking for projects, I think we're going to have to be a name that everyone's going to come and look to.
Yeah, and prices and ESG aside, I'm assuming projects in Australia can attract more perhaps value due to the country's prestige anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It's like, Australia, Canada, it's one of those, tier one jurisdictions that everybody likes to invest in. Yeah. So we're in Western Australia. We're just 2 hours outside of Kalgoorlie. Like I say, it's undercover and it's frontier, but it's 2 hours from a major mining town. The very large gold mine of Tropicana was built a little bit further out, just past us. We're close to gas pipelines for infrastructure and stuff like that. So, it's to your point, it's still Western Australia. It's still a great place to be investing and looking for nickel.
Right. And what about the people behind the business? Tell us a bit about your history and that of some of the key members of the team.
Yeah, so WMG was put together by myself and the founder, Frank Canavo. Frank and I have worked together for about the last 8 years. He does the deals, assembles assets, and then we list them on the ASX, and then I run them as the MD. So we put this together in late 2020 and listed it in July 2021. We're still both significant shareholders of the company in the top 5 shareholders. And then also another key member of the team is our technical director, Dr. Ben Gregruick. He's something of a WA nickel expert. He's first named author on many papers on the likes of Mount Keith or Perseverance. He found the West Jordan nickel sulphide deposit when he was running a real Nichols exploration. And then BHP's Nebo Babel asset, again, he's first author on many of the papers there. So, we approached him maybe about a year and a half after listing, once we'd put the first drill holes in and this was looking like the next Mount Keith. Yeah. We hit him up to come and do some consulting, and then very soon after 3-6 months, he eventually joined the board as well. This is the only junior company he's ever been on the board of. So, certainly a validation of the project, we think, there. So, and then the last member of the board is Rex Turkington, our chairman, who's an ex-broker in Perth. Very well connected, coming from that financial background.
Okay, cool. So plenty of experience, and you did touch on this, but I see management ownership sits at nearly 10%, which I would say is pretty high. So just wanted to ask, is sort of maintaining and perhaps even increasing that skin in the game something you prioritize?
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's, frankly, that's certainly how we think. We own part of the company, and we certainly, we look to run it in the best interests of all shareholders. And, that feeds into how we run the company. We run it very frugally, very efficiently. We're very conscious that as we do capital raises, we're diluting ourselves. And in fact, you can probably see nearly every capital raise we've done, and we just did one a few weeks ago that maybe we can mention, but my Frank and I are taking part in that capital raise. Directors have taken part in nearly every capital raise we've done. At least one or multiple directors have taken part, both to support the project and maintain that ownership level in the business. Certainly maybe something different, as you alluded to, different to other ASX companies, whereby if you've got no skin in the game, then you just raise as many shares as you want to pay your salary, because what do you care? Like, that's certainly not our attitude. We consider we're in this for the equity upside. We're not in it for the day rate. Yeah,
absolutely. And staying on that point, the number of shares in issue is very low compared to peers, as you highlight in your presentation. So based on what you just said and that point, I imagine that's going to continue to be a focus moving forward.
Definitely, yes. We look to flag that. I mean, we didn't list as a nickel company per se. We listed with a number of assets, of which Mulga Tank was the best, being a nickel asset. But at the same time, there's a number of peers that we put in the presentation that called themselves dedicated WA nickel sulphide explorers. And where are they now? They put projects together and listed with 110, 120 million shares already outstanding at IPO. And then subsequently, their share count is now 500 million shares. We put Mulga Tank together, we put the entire company together cheaply, which is what we always do. There was only about 43 million shares outstanding at IPO. We've raised about, I don't know how much we've raised. We spent about $10 million on the project over the last 4 years to get it to a resource stage. And, we have 97 million shares outstanding, but Wednesday this week, having just completed our largest ever capital raise, we'll actually have 115 million shares outstanding, but that's still, that's still 1/5 of some of these peers. And, and that goes to the point of the ownership, right? At the end of the day, whatever we discover here, if we sell this, we bring it into production and we pay dividends, any final value will be divided by the number of shares outstanding. And so yeah, we're incentivized to keep that share count down, being holders ourselves.
Great, yeah. So going back to Mulga Tank, like you say, you've already got that resource estimate out, but the project does seem to be getting bigger every time you drill. So obviously we're looking at district scale potential here, but I mean, can you speak to how big you think this might be ultimately?
Yeah, it's a pretty insane piece of rock, actually. The main body of this is a very large sort of dunite intrusion, which is an ultramafic rock. And without trying to get too technical on this, but it's underneath 60 meters of sand cover. But then as soon as you get beneath the sand, you're into high MgO, 45% plus MgO, adcumulate to extreme adcumulate dunite. You are in the bottom of a huge hot system, and then that dunite continues for 1,000 meters. And we've drilled long diamond holes through this, and we see meters and meters of core with disseminated pentlandite mineralization, and pentlandite is the nickel sulfide mineral, the primary one that you're looking for. And so it's just a huge, this intrusion's 5 kilometers by 4 kilometers by 1,000 meters deep. And it's just full of nickel sulfide as we drill everywhere we drill. Now, obviously it's expensive to drill something out of that size, but we've drilled out with RC, we've drilled out the top 300 or 400 meters, and that's where our resource is, over about a 2 kilometer by 1 kilometer area, and that's where there's 5 million tons of contained nickel. But it almost certainly gets bigger than that. But it's kind of, that's enough. There's enough nickel there to produce 40, 50,000 tons a year for 40, 50 years. So we almost don't need to find any more. Now it's a question of finding the tons with the best economics. And, if we can look to find areas within the intrusion closer to a 0.4% grade, and we can bring those forward in a mine plan, then that'll just increase the payback of any sort of future project and future mine. So certainly the focus of our shallow drilling is looking for boosting the economic tons. But then at depth here, as I alluded to, as you come to the base here, and we think this intrusion is still sitting right way up and sitting very much in place. There is an incredibly well mineralized zone at the bottom 200 meters sitting on that footwall. We drill these deep diamond holes, and we see coarse disseminated pentlandite. We see these very large immiscible melt globules. We see remobilized massive sulfide. So this disseminated system, the sulfides have coalesced, and it's forming massive sulfide somewhere in this large bowl-shaped intrusion. And so we're looking for that little bit of milk when you finish your cereal, that little bit of milk that's left in the bowl there. We're trying to drill and hit that. And if we find that, then this could be perseverance, would be the analogy. And that's 50 million tons at 2.5% nickel. And we think we're in a good shot of finding something like that, or multiple versions of that. And that's the real prize here. We think the company's very backstopped by the current valuation, by the current resource. But if we can just drill the drill hole we'd like to drill for that discovery of perseverance, then that changes the game.
Well,
sure.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about analog projects actually. So perseverance is the parallel you might draw there for. But
this is the one we're shooting for. We've got something akin to a Mount Keith, you would say, for a large disseminated type system. Then Mount Keith is the household name, and that's Ben's bread and butter, where he worked the first half of his career. But increasingly, we think it's more like perseverance, which is a hybrid between a Mount Keith higher up, and then it's got a type 1 basal massive sulfide component at the bottom. And so that's how we think Mulga Tank fits in and better suits. Yeah. Lots of this remobilized massive and these melt globules and things like that. You don't see any of that at Mount Keith, so it's more akin to perseverance. So, but until we find it, then we're just arm waving. But we're trying to do that high quality, frugal technical work to go and find it.
Yeah, well, it's good to have a target and such a large target in mind, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah, it keeps us excited, and every drill hole, the guys just waiting till we get down to that bottom 200 meters, and everybody's just waiting to hit. So, one day.
One day. Finally, just to finish, could you tell me why now is a good time to invest in Western mining?
Yeah, so we think, we're at a very hard floor in the nickel price. We think the only way is up in the nickel price. And so we offer certainly good leverage to that as the largest nickel sulphide deposit in Australia. We're both going to expand that resource and improve the economics of that resource. Some metallurgical test work should be coming out along with a scoping study in the first half of next year. So that will underpin the economics. And so that's certainly one side of the business. And we see multiple upsides there. There's a company called Canada Nickel that has a similar deposit 3 years ahead of us with a 200 mil market cap. So, if we catch them up, then there's 8 to 10 times your money. Now, the really exciting stuff, though, is if we can just find where Perseverance is, and then that's, these nickel, copper, PGE sulfide ore bodies are some of the highest value per ton ore bodies, or in situ value per ton on the planet. And so you see things like Voisey's Bay, or you see things like Nova Bollinger, 24 months after discovery, these sell for billions of dollars. And so, that's the blue sky thinking. So we think it's well underpinned. It's option on the nickel price, option on re-rating to Canada Nickel, and then we've got some exciting exploration to come as well.
Great, yeah. So quite a few key milestones coming perhaps early next year, towards the end of this year sort of time.
Yeah, having just completed an equity raise, we'll be drilling from now through to the end of the year, and we'll be continuing that into next year. So steady flow of those drill results. And then in the background, working on metallurgy, and we're working on scoping study to backstop the economics.
Okay. Well, it's been great to learn more about the business, and looking forward to seeing what comes up next. Perhaps we can catch up again then to discuss. For now, though, Caedmon, thank you again for your time.
Great. No, thank you. Great to be on.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.